I woke up this morning, and this was not my first illustration, my opening illustration, but the Braveheart. I had the movie Braveheart stuck in my mind, and that scene where they're in a line, they're all painted for war, the Scots, and the English are across the way, and the Mel Gibson says, "Hold!" and the cavalry is charging at them. Hold! And the cavalry continues to charge. And they have their swords and their shields. Hold! And people are starting to get nervous, and the music is amping up, and you know what I'm talking about? And everybody think the cavalry is just going to charge in. Hold! And it's going to be really, really nerve-wracking, and they're going to trample Mel Gibson, and that's the end of the movie. That's not what happens, though. At the end of this part, they surprisingly drop their swords and shields, and they pick up these long spears. Anybody remember this? But he does it at the very last moment. And for that time, things look way better than they did earlier, right before. But everybody was kind of nervous and scared that they were waiting too long and holding too long. This happens so much when the bombs drop. We've been talking, going through this series, started 4 weeks ago, and essentially what we know is 100% of us go through some stuff. During this series, has anyone gone through some really hard stuff? Yeah, and the good news is 100% of us are going to be going through hard stuff in this world, in this life. So the bombs, and we've used this metaphor of the bombs dropping, right? And so that's how we started this series. And if I could do it all over again, I'm just going to tell you one brief mistake, and I didn't realize it till this week. I would have done last week's message this week and this week's message last week. But that doesn't matter. So here we are. But I did want to say this. Our temptation, whenever bad things happen that are outside of our control, the temptation is to get control as soon as possible, even at the risk of making really, really, really bad decisions. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Because perhaps you have at one point or the other gone through a relationship that went really bad. And somebody said amen to that. Somebody said that was a slapper. And then your response was to get in another relationship immediately after, because definitely that was going to be the answer to the old problems. Or let's say you have a job and you lose that job and you got to get a job, so you jump into a long-term job that wasn't a right fit and it ended up being really, really horrible. But you had to get control of the situation as soon as possible. Or many times, you know, in the Old Testament, the Jewish people had this idea given to them by God to take time to mourn when you have somebody close to you who you've lost. And what happens sometimes is we try to take control too quickly, and we don't take the appropriate amount of time to kind of sink in and allow things to mull over in our minds and in our hearts, right? And that is the temptation, that when the bombs drop, you are tempted to go, you know what I need to do is I need to get control of stuff, and I need to take charge of stuff, and I need to make everything better because I'm the only person that can do it, and And then inevitably, what happens? If you're anything like me, is you opt for a really dumb decision. And that really dumb decision, you're going, why did I make that? Why did I do that again? And so you maybe even change that. And then you get back into another dumb decision. And so how do you get through that? And what is the most appropriate, what is the best way to kind of get through that? Thankfully, we have the scripture to kind of teach us this and teach us these things. We have other people. We're going to look today at 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, I keep seeing this meme around Facebook, which is a really, really wise use of my time. And this meme says, if Paul were around today, we would be getting a letter. The church would be getting a letter, right? And so Paul typically wrote these letters, which is what Corinthians is, to churches that he had started. And he wanted to either correct a behavior or correct a thought process that they had kind of gone, that maybe they had gone astray. So Corinth, I actually heard a podcast of one of my favorite people, theologians, church leaders, the last few weeks ago actually, where he had said that Corinth was one of the churches that didn't experience widespread persecution, intense persecution. And so Paul was actually consistently talking about their behavior and their bad behavior. Because if you are being persecuted for your beliefs, then inevitably what can happen is you don't have time to worry about behavior, or maybe you don't even get into bad behavior because you're just trying to vie for your life. So Corinth didn't have that problem. So Paul was consistently, theoretically, getting them about their bad behavior. So the second, especially in the first letter, the second letter, Paul is clearly talking about a group of people who have accused him of basically taking too much authority. Like, we want to follow other apostles. We don't really believe what you're saying. And so Paul responds to that. He's saying, they're saying, you're not a real apostle. We don't really want to follow you. There's others who are better. So Paul responds to that. And in chapter 12, verse 1, we're going to look at this in several passages. Basically, in 11, he talks like I think about like last week's reading. He talks a lot about the things he has done. He talks a lot about the things kind of in his resume. So then he says this boasting will do no good, but I must go on. I will reluctantly tell about visions and revelations from the Lord. Now, I love this. This is a really interesting passage. If you read any other translation, or many other translations other than New Living Translation, what they do is Paul doesn't actually name himself here. But the New Living Translation understands, so most theologians, or many theologians, believe that he's talking about himself. He's kind of talking in third person. So the New Living Translation, which we're reading from, they actually do say that this is from Paul, and they translate it that way. I was caught up to the third heaven 14 years ago. Whether I was in my body or out of my body, I don't know, only God knows. Yes, only God knows whether I was in my body or outside of my body, but I do know that I was caught up to paradise and heard things so astounding that they cannot be expressed in words, things no human is allowed to tell. So a lot of people, if you've been around the church world a number of times, you know that a lot of people sometimes say, you know, I just had this feeling from God. God told me. Historically, I have been very cynical. Maybe you too. I mean, we live in a very cynical world. Usually, when somebody tells me that, I think to myself, I probably shouldn't say this. I'm confessing. May I confess? Thank you. I think to myself, loco, right? Like I just think, like, you know what? You probably shouldn't say that. You'll very rarely will you hear me say, God told me, right? Like, that's a very dangerous thing, right? And so Paul is saying this, things no human is allowed to tell, okay? But here's his greater point. That experience is worth boasting about, but I'm not going to do it. Oh, he pulls an epic teaching turn here. Beautiful. I will boast only about my weaknesses. Now, the Greek word here for weaknesses means incapacities or limitations. I'm going to boast only about my limitations. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine Jason Tatum? I am the worst perimeter shooter in the game. Right? I mean, can you imagine like somebody like today doing that sort of thing, boasting only about their limitations? But that is what Paul is doing. And then he goes beyond. He said, if I wanted to boast, I would be no fool in doing so, because I would be telling the truth. There's a little passive-aggressive, like, talking trash there, in my opinion. That's okay. He says, but I won't do it, because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message. Even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God. So I have all this stuff. God is using me. I'm starting churches. There's cool things going on. God is talking to me. Even though I could boast about all that stuff, I'm not going to do it. And here's why. He gives us the reason why. And you're going to understand this because you too have gone through the bombs dropping in your life. You too have had really hard things happen, and maybe you're in the midst of it now. So to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. A thorn in my flesh. It doesn't say what it is. A thorn, a trouble, a bomb, something that Paul is going through that is so intense, so intense that 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. God, please, take this away from me. I want no part of it. It is a limitation. It is something in my way that if I didn't have it, I would be able to do so much more. You ever thought that? And then he does come in and mention something that God told him. Each time, here's what God said. My grace is all you need. It's sufficient. It's adequate. It's enough, Chris Tomlin says. My power, God says, works best. In other words, it's fulfilled through you. My power happens in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of the Messiah, the power of Christ can work through me. In other words, Marty, no matter how talented you are, no matter how excellent you are, no matter how God made you, the power of Christ actually works best in your limitations and in your incapacities. That's how the power comes through. And so Paul says that is why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for the Messiah, for Christ. And this line, I despise this line so much, and it's so good. For when I'm weak, then I am strong. There's a principle here, and it's going to help you grow in spiritual maturity It's a principle I saw people go through in my life, my parents, others. If you gravitate to this principle, it will help you grow far beyond. If you're wondering, how do I grow in following Jesus? How do I do that? You're going to learn a big principle here. And by the way, you're going to hate it. It will help you, though, when you respond on Facebook or social media to something you didn't like. It'll help you when you want to lash out because of all the hurt that you've experienced. And that is, I don't know how else to say this, but you'll rejoice in your trials, in your weaknesses, in your incapacities, in your hardships. And if you want to look at the difference between us and the early church, or the early church and anyone else, it's that consistently. And you can read it from Paul, you can read it from James, you can read it from Peter, you can read it from all of us. And I don't like this any more than you do, but consistently, over and over and over, they repeat it, and then they'll repeat it again. If you want to grow up, you've got to learn to rejoice in your trials. To not take the bull by the horn first, and try to get control of a horrible situation. Now, there's a reason for this. Jesus constantly did this. Instead of acting on his first instinct, here's what he did. He paused, and he said, I don't do anything by myself. I only do what I see my Father doing. Okay? And here's the principle we learned here. It takes discipline to live in your weakness. Oh, anybody ever play pickleball? Yeah. I have been playing. And I want to tell you, I'm not very good, which irritates me because I think I'm an excellent tennis player. I'm an excellent ping pong player. I really would put myself in that category. And then I played pickleball. There's this wonderful woman. She happens to be working out the same time I do at the Y at 5:15 a.m. every morning. She's like 4'3" and, like 70 years old. And I played pickleball at the Y, and she was there. And she's like, come on, Marty, let's play. And I'm thinking to myself, I should not be on your court because I'm going to destroy you. More confession. She beat my tail all over the place. It was like the first week I played. All over the place. And if I brought her up here, you'd be like, there is no way. Crushed me. But here's the thing about pickleball. I play with Scott, and super good. But Scott's constantly telling me, and I heard him tell Sawyer on last Tuesday, don't hit it so hard. We know how strong you are. You actually have to pull back on how hard you hit it to keep it lower to the net. And I'm like, no, I'm going to hit this ball so hard that lady goes flying back. And it never works, ever. Every time she beats me. It takes discipline. It doesn't take discipline if you have God-given power, right? Boom. It takes discipline to live in your weakness. And so what we are called to do when we go through trials and tribulations, before you even get to the rejoice in them, we have to hold until we hear. Hold until we hear. In other words, just stop, calm down, and be patient. Nobody wants to hear about patience anymore. We have microwave ovens, doggone it. We can get all the information we can in this little pocket device as quick as we can, right? Nobody wants to be patient. We have to learn this. As followers of Jesus, we have to be patient. Ironically, I was not able to be patient, and I saw The Chosen the first day it came out, Friday night. And Jesus is losing patience in the Holy Week. Whew. Anyways, be patient with your family. Be patient with the hardships. Be patient. You don't have to change everything today, this very minute. Sit in it. Don't just be patient. This is going to be harder. Sit in the pain. As Americans, we definitely hate this. Sit in the pain. Focus on it. There might be nothing you can do right now. And I hate that you have to go through it. But sit in it. What if it never went away? For 40 years, and I've told you this story, my mom has prayed about a particular illness that's never gone away. What if you had to sit in that? Sit in your pain. And then lastly, hold until you hear means listen for God's direction. Listen for God's direction. We have so many voices that just come at us. So many advertisements, so many bumper stickers, so many visual, audio, technological voices coming every which way. I do, you do, we all do. It's hard to hear God's voice. It's hard to sit quietly. But, listen, the wilderness can be a healing place. It can be. It can be a hard place. But it can be a healing place. And I don't, once again, know every bomb that's been dropped your way. And I don't mean to make this sound like a bumper sticker. But when you sit quietly and you don't try to change things immediately, and when nothing can be done, the best thing you could do is sit in a place of healing. Because the consequences, let's talk about the consequences for a second. They're miserable, right? Especially in a corporate environment. And I say corporate, I could mean your family, I could mean your church, I could mean your workplace, a corporate, right? Because what happens is drama starts when we can't sit in our discipline. Well, I got to get ahead of this. Right? Rumors. When the bomb drops, it's better to sit and hold until you hear from God and He can give you direction, because what happens is your silence through bomb drops is critical for a healthy community to prevent dysfunction. Why do churches get dysfunctional? Because people got to talk in the midst of pain. Instead of sitting back. I'm not advocating not sharing, by the way. But here's what happens. If you just take a moment, sit back, hear from God. God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do in the midst of the bomb drops? What do you want me to do in the midst of the hardship? What do you want me to do in the midst of this relational struggle, financial struggle, whatever it is? It'll go away, but there will be carnage. And destruction is no place for growing fruit. So it has to be fixed. You have to go through a process of healing. Okay? Let me give an example. Chernobyl, 1986. Many of you don't remember this. Some of you do. I was 1 year old, plus 10. there was a nuclear reactor accident, right? 30 people died. 237 people got acute radiation syndrome. 350,000 people were evacuated from their homes, right? So they had to come. It was this massive thing in Russia, the Soviet Union, rather. And it was this massive thing and destruction, and people were hurt. Local enforcement came in, they got hurt. Military came in, and then they brought in radiation safety officers. They brought in doctors. And what happens is, in the midst of carnage, it's hard to get control of stuff. So nobody knows what to do, especially when people are going through something they've never gone through before. And inevitably, you are going to go through stuff that you've never gone through. Right? So what happened, there's actually a doctor who studied this named Robert Gale, a hematologist. He treated radiation victims after the accident, and he estimated that in the Soviet Union and in Europe, because of false information about radiation at that time, over 1 million babies were aborted in Soviet Union and Europe, literally because of bad information that they received about the amount of radiation that those babies had. When you go through something and you're not careful, you could, if you don't go through the healing, you could participate in carnage, not of that sort, but you don't understand that you haven't gone through healing, that you're in this place of brokenness. And so you start to talk out. You start to hurt people with your mouth. You start to gossip and backbite. You start to manipulate. And we want to be a community where healthy spirit living produces all kinds of good spirit fruit: love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faith, gentleness, self-control. There's no law against those things, Paul says. So if we want to produce that, that means we have to be, just like Jesus, a hospital for sinners. That means also all of us are sinners. Well, what do we do with that? We have to splash grace all over the place, but we also have to lovingly correct one another when we're off base. It's not easy, especially when someone doesn't know that they got issues. Right? And so church can be messy. We need some RSOs in the house, some radiation safety officers. Some of you, spiritually mature people, and I know you because you're saying to yourself, I'm not spiritually mature. Those of you who are like, yeah, I am, probably take a day. When you see something, right, go to that person and work around the carnage to help them, because they're producing destruction. That's what we do when we go, I have to do something now. You don't. Let's wait to see what God says in this scenario. Let's wait to see how He moves and how He guides. It's never easy. Even this talk, literally. I make 20 decisions a week about how I can do something better at church. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So, if you're going through this, if you're going through it, hold until you hear. If you think it might be time, talk to somebody. Communicate. right? Communicate, communicate, communicate. You got this.